Hello everybody and welcome to Me. Today I want to talk about how Ben Askren will beat Jake Paul and why he will beat Jake Paul. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. And alright, let's get the show started. So let's start with the table of contents. I will first start to talk about Jake, their problem child, Paul. Look at his fighting background, look at his record, look at his fighting style. Then I will move on to the mental warfare aspect, and then I will move over to Ben Funky, awesome nickname, Askren, and then I will make predictions on who and how each fighter is going to win, and that will be this video. So let's start. So Jake, the problem child, Paul. If you look at Jake Paul's record, he has fought absolute tomato cans, Alison Gibb and Nate Robinson. Alison Gibb was another YouTuber who also had his first professional fight against Jake. The guy went in over his head, he underperformed, he wasn't very good, he got knocked out in the first round in a boxing match, and boxing gloves doesn't knock you out that easily. And you could see that he didn't train enough, he was too small for Jake, he went in over his head. If you look at Nate Robinson, who was a professional basketball player, he also, no fighting background, he was a basketball player, he went in over his head, he looked like he never got hit in his entire life while fighting against Jake Paul. Watch the fight. He jumps in, he charges at Jake Paul, and Jake just knocks him down like he's a potato salad or something. So Jake really hasn't fought a real fighter yet. And both of these fighters had their first professional debut against Jake Paul, and Jake Paul has way more money, way more time, and way more resources, and just because of that he could have outcompeted them. So his record doesn't say much about him in that way. Jake Paul's hardest fight was against Deji. Just me saying that should be enough, but it isn't, so let's continue. Jake Paul's hardest fight was against Deji. It was an amateur fight, they both wore headgear, and the problem with headgear is headgear protects your brain. Yes, that's good. So you don't get punch drunk. Yes, it's good. But a headgear absorbs the shots different. It transmits the shots to all around your head and not focus on a single point. So no matter how much you train with your headgear on, a fight without headgear is different. In that regard, we have never seen Jake Paul's chin, because his chin hasn't been tested yet, because he chose his fighters very smartly. We have never seen his gas tank, really. His gas tank was okay against Deji, but Deji is no Ben Askren. He for sure does have a chin, otherwise he wouldn't have lasted against Deji that long, and he obviously does have a bit of a gas tank. But if that is enough against a professional athlete, that's another story. But you know, I don't want to focus on the negative aspects of Jake Paul too much, because Jake Paul will bring a lot of new potential, a lot of new fans to the boxing industry. Jake Paul will move the needle. His fight against Ben Askren is already one of the highest selling pay-per-view events of 2021. So in a way you can say that Jake Paul has left a good impression of the boxing community, and he kind of manages to unify the martial arts community as well. And there aren't really a lot of friendships in the martial arts community from a competitive perspective. And Ben Ben Askren will be Jake Paul's hardest fight. No doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. He will be Jake Paul's second fight. He will be Jake Paul's hardest fight after that year, which actually says a lot. But, you know, Jake Paul still has a chance. Every fighter, everywhere has a chance. Even Alison Gibb or Nate Robinson, who were completely amateurs, if you look at their fighting record, they both still had a chance. Not a big one, but they had a chance. This is the fighting industry. That's why we love martial arts. Even the biggest underdog can suddenly knock out a champion. It isn't very likely, it doesn't happen very often, but it happens because this is martial arts. And let's move on to mental warfare. So, look at Ben Askren's press conferences. Look at Ben Askren's face-offs. Look at Ben Askren's weigh-ins. Look at Ben Askren's interactions with his fans during the Q&As. Ben Askren has one of the thickest skins that I have ever seen in a person. I think when he goes to a hospital, the needle actually breaks when they try to inject it in his arm because you can't get under this guy's skin. So Jake Paul, however, on the other side, he might have matured a little bit, but when you look at his vlogs, he I think is a guy who can get easily agitated. We haven't seen the press conferences yet, but I expect a cool Ben Askren and a very motivated Jake Paul who can get emotional very easily. And in terms of reactions to trash talking, there are three types of fighters' reactions to trash talking. First of all, the fighters who don't care. They went in the same to the fight with or without the trash talk. For example, Rosa Namajunas. Watch her fight against JJ. JJ tried to trash talk her the whole time. Rosa couldn't care less. She just went into the octagon and whooped her ass. Or look at Dan Henderson. Look at his face-off against Michael Bisping. The way he just answers to Bisping, yeah, they will give me a new one, just showed how completely unfazed he is by trash talking. Maybe even at Stipe Miocic, because Stipe Miocic also knows that in the end they're gonna fight, so what they say doesn't matter. He looked completely unfazed against Francis Ngannou, and Stipe doesn't play these mental games. He knows he's better than that. Then there is the second type of reaction to trash talking, and that is the reaction that you get ruthless, you get relentless, you just ground and pound him, you strike him. And for example, Khabib Nurmagomedov comes into mind against his fight against Conor, because Khabib said Conor was in his head, but he knew he has to control his emotions enough so that he can still win. And if you look at the fight, when Khabib said, hey, let's talk, while punching the hell out of Conor McGregor, you could see he was agitated, but he could control his emotions good enough that he could still beat Conor's ass. For example, Justin Gaethje against Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson called Justin Gaethje nearly every insult that he could say to a person. He called him inbred, he called him a neckbeard, maybe even an incel. You know, like, he pushed the boundaries way too much. You could see that Justin Gaethje was actually worked up, but he could control his emotions well enough, and when you look at the fight, you also saw how it played out. I get that with true mental warfare, only then you can see a fighter's true potential, how they react with emotional stress to a situation. And how they react calm to a situation. These are two completely different types of reaction that a person can have. Just look at Jorge Masvidal against Ben Askren. Jorge Masvidal said on the Joe Rogan Experience that he was angry enough to get up at 6 a.m. every morning and to train because he just wanted to hurt this guy so bad. Even in his post-fight conference, he said, "I'ma whoop his ass at Whole Foods if I see him there." I mean, like, even his post-fight celebration, you could definitely see that he had anger towards Ben Askren. And then there comes the third types of reaction to trash talking. And these are the fighters who let it get in their head, who get way too emotional and lose because of it. Jose Aldo, Dustin Poirier's first fight against Conor McGregor, Chad Mendes, Eddie Alvarez, actually almost any opponent that Conor McGregor ever had. Maybe Luke Rockhold. You could see how salty he was after Michael Bisping's win in the post-fight press conference. And you could see it in the fight against Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo didn't even think about it. He just rushed forward and started swinging punches in the air. One clean shot from Conor and he was knocked out unconscious. Look at what Dustin Poirier has said. He said in his fight against Conor McGregor he felt like a deer in the headlights. You shouldn't feel like that before going into a fight. You should feel calm enough and rational enough that you can solve the puzzle, develop a good strategy, and beat that opponent down. I think if Jake Paul manages to get under Ben Askren's skin, which is highly unlikely, it's far more likely to Ben Askren to get in Jake Paul's skin. I think that Jake Paul will be the third type of guy who gets way too emotional, and Ben Askren will be the second type of guy. Ben Askren will absolutely get ruthless, I think, if Jake Paul really manages to get under his skin. And this brings us to Ben Askren, the funky guy himself. I love his nickname. I really like his nickname. I like his entrance music. He's a stoic kind of guy and he's humble, so he's got that going for him. Just looking at Ben Askren's background should be enough to tell you that he's going to win the fight. Olympic wrestler, submission grappling, freestyle wrestling, one champion, Bellator champion. In both companies he was undefeated, undisputed. He went over to the UFC. I don't know what happened there. I think he was just unlucky against Jorge Masvidal, and then the sport moved on him before he could move on with the sport. But that happens to just about any athlete in the game, so it's actually pretty normal. What we could see with Ben Askren, however, against his fight, for example, against Robbie Lawler, was the guy has an insane chin. He has one of the best chins I have ever seen. He himself said that he can take a good shot to close the distance and take the guy down, and he has a mediocre to good gas tank. We could see in his round against Robbie Lawler that he was a bit gassed out when he started to grapple him, but at the end he still got the choke. Some people argue that it was a controversial decision. I don't think that it is. I think that you shouldn't ever play around with your spinal nerves, because Ben Askren needed to just pull it a bit into the wrong direction, and Robbie Lawler could have had complications with his nervous system with his whole life. He could have been a quadrileptic even if it went very badly. So yeah, and if you look at Jake Paul's record, professional record, He has been in the boxing ring for about 10 minutes. That's not a lot. No matter how many sparring sessions you have, you can't recreate the feeling of the fight in and out of itself. You can't. You might get near it, you might feel like it, but a fight is something completely different than a sparring session. Ben Askren has had a lot of 3-round fights. He has had a lot of 5-round fights in his MMA career. Ben Askren knows how to conserve his gas tank to last all the rounds. He knows exactly how many shots he can take in a round. These are things that you have to experience in the fighting itself. This can't be learned. No matter how many times you try to recreate it, you can't learn this. And Ben Askren knows this, and Jake Paul knows this. So Ben Askren has got that going for him, for example. And we will see when we watch the fight. I for sure will watch the fight. When we see Jake Paul's expressions when he fights against a real professional competitive athlete, we will see by Jake's expressions that he plays with the real players now, that he is in the next level. And you know, like, I've told you guys all of this, okay? I've told you people all of this. And if you look at the betting records, Ben Askren is still the underdog, which is, in my opinion, completely ridiculous. I think Jake Paul should have been the underdog in the upcoming fight, but I don't know what has happened, why Ben Askren is the underdog. Just look at their records, just look at their fighting styles, and think about that. Let's look at Khabib Nurmagomedov, okay? Khabib Nurmagomedov, look at his striking against Tebow, and look at his striking against Justin Gaethje. Just from that, from his learning curve from Tebow to Gaethje, he outstriked a striker. Justin Gaethje also has a wrestling background, but he doesn't train on the mat. He himself said that. He outstriked a striker, and he predominantly trains wrestling. And Ben Askren is also a very competitive guy. Think about it. So, you have a real competitive guy who has world-class wrestling, okay? And Ben Askren himself said in the interview, boxing, you have to focus on such a small area like this. With mixed martial arts, the area becomes suddenly this. But with boxing, he only has to focus on this. He doesn't even have to train wrestling. Ben Askren is a very smart guy. When he posts videos of himself sparring, he won't post his best sparring videos, because Jake Paul's team definitely watches them. It's a part of the tactical game. You just watch your opponent's sparring session, you watch their earlier fights to get a good overview on them, to make a good strategy, to find out how you can beat them. So if Ben Askren is smart, he won't post his best sparring sessions. And he himself said it's far easier to specialize, far easier to learn when you have to just focus on such a small area. And he's a competitive guy, so his learning curve will go through the roof with boxing. Yeah, and let's move on to how each fighter will win, I think, in my opinion. So, Jake Paul, there is a 99% chance that Jake Paul won't KO Ben Askren. I don't think that Jake Paul will knock out Ben Askren. There is still a possibility he might get 2 or 3 lucky shots in a row and all of a sudden Ben Askren is out. But boxing gloves aren't designed for knocking out. Boxing gloves are designed to drag on the fight as long as possible, so there is no knocking out Ben Askren. If Ben Askren fights that dirty as he says, and if the fight lasts all the 8 rounds, then maybe Jake Paul will win by points. If Ben Askren clinches too much, if he fights too much dirty, then Jake Paul definitely has a chance. And he might even get a TKO win over Ben Askren if he gets a few lucky shots. He still has a puncher's chance. Maybe Ben Askren will get disqualified because he starts wrestling in the boxing ring. You can never know this. We won't know this until we see the actual fight. One thing I for sure as hell know is that Jake Paul will target Ben's new hip replacement. This is a no-brainer. Ben Askren himself said that his performance is through the roof with his new hip replacement, that he can move a lot faster, a lot better, that he can sleep better overall. Just alone a better sleep schedule will increase your performance. So thinking about that, I think that we will see one of Ben Askren's best performances that we could ever see from him. And how Ben Askren will win is there is a good possibility that Ben Askren will KO Jake Paul. We haven't seen his gas tank, we haven't seen his chin. Clinching tires you out. Ben Askren is a wrestler. Ben Askren knows how to clinch. He knows how to clinch someone and bring them out of their rhythm. And if you place the game with the mental warfare good as well, there is actually a decent chance, not that much high, but still the chance is there that he can knock out Jake Paul. What I think will rather happen is, even with the boxing gloves, that he will TKO Jake Paul. I think that the ref will stop the fight in the end because he will drop Jake Paul too often, because he will wear him out. I think he will be more defensive in the first few rounds and then even clinch more in the first few rounds, but then he will go all out with his striking when Jake Paul's gas tank is a bit more strained than in his fights before. And I think there is a good chance that he can TKO him. And if Ben Askren really says that he's gonna clinch a lot and the fight lasts the whole 8 rounds, there isn't really a chance that Ben Askren will win, because you lose points if you clinch too much. And if Ben Askren will really clinch a lot, as he says, then he has to TKO him, just like he predicted. One thing that I for sure know is Jake Paul will face a fresh Ben Askren with his best performance, who will outcompete him and who will outstrike him and who will outperform him. That is one thing that I for sure know. And that was it even for the end of my video. If you are still there, I can congratulate you. I'm very happy for you. I'm thankful that you watched my video. If you have a different opinion, you can write it in the comments. We can have a nice discussion. You can leave a like, you can subscribe if you want more videos like this in the future. And hear me out.